Hi everyone, welcome to Blytheweigh's International Women's Day panel, Modern Mining, offering exciting career prospects for women. Today I'm joined by four guests, Anne Oxy, Technical Director at Brazilian Nickel, Claire Bay, VP, Exploration and Business Development at Oriel Resources, Louise Raffel, Director of Corporate Relations at Central Asia Metals, and Lucy Crane, Senior Geologist and Business Development at Cornish Lithium. Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. Louise, let's start with you. What inspired you to get into the mining industry?
Sure, thanks, Megan. I did a degree in geology, and that was more kind of academic than vocational, really. But I enjoyed it, and I was looking for a career with that knowledge as a base, really. And I think what attracted me initially to mining was the type of geology you typically get involved with. Mineral deposits was of more interest to me than other aspects. And also, I saw it as a good long-term career path because I just thought it was, to be part of generating and producing the raw materials that are absolutely essential for life seemed to me a good business to be in. That was the case then, and arguably even more so now, given the push towards renewable, sustainable future. We absolutely need the materials that we produce through mining. So yeah, those were the two main reasons.
Thanks. And do you have any female role models that have helped you in particular through your career?
Yeah, I think early on, I didn't have sort of too many female role models, but recently I've been very fortunate because in 2019, we appointed a non-exec director onto the board of the company I work for, Central Asia Metals, a lady called Dr. Gillian Davidson. She's a sustainability expert, and her joining the board has coincided with my investor relations role becoming much more sustainability focused, because obviously that's an area that the investors are increasingly focused on as well. So personally, I've been on a pretty steep learning curve actually in the last couple of years on this topic, and Gillian's help and guidance has been absolutely invaluable. So it's been really great having her involved and having her helping me.
Great, thank you. Lucy, what attracted you to a career in mining?
Oh, probably I've ended up in mining more by accident rather than design, if I'm completely honest. During my undergrad, a bit like Louise said, my undergrad was really academic, which was great and it was really interesting, but wasn't particularly vocational. So I ended up doing an internship one summer between my third and fourth year of my undergrad, where I worked for BP. And I spent the summer, it was the first time I'd earned a proper wage, and I was living in central London, going to the office every day on the tube, and spending the entire day sitting at a computer screen picking seismic lines. And I kind of finished the summer and just thought there's got to be something more interesting that I can do with my life than this. And I really enjoyed my degree and I wanted to use the tools that I developed. So looked into doing a master's at the Camborne School of Mines after actually attending a Women in Mining event. A girl who was in the year above me had said, "Oh, I'm going to this careers evening in London. Do you want to come to it?" Went to it. There was a talk by actually a lady called Sarah Gordon, who now works or has set up the company called Sartala. And she just did this fantastic talk about how her career so far had taken her all over the world. She worked with different groups of people. She had so much variety and it just sounded absolutely brilliant. And my friend and I we came away from that evening both thinking, right, we need to get into mining. Sounds great. So I went to Camborne School of Mines, did a master's there, and ended up working in exploration. And it was only really, I got into it because I found it intellectually interesting, but it's only really in the last few years as my roles developed, and actually since joining Cornish Lithium as well, become a lot more involved in, the bigger picture about quite how vital raw materials are to our daily lives and how it's so important that actually we're extracting them as responsibly as possible. So I think it's such a fantastic career for people to end up in.
Great, thank you. And Claire, maybe slightly similarly, you started thinking about a career in mining during your last year at uni, didn't you? Kind of, why did you stick with it and why are you still here now?
I mean, it's really refreshing to hear Louise and Lucy's accounts, because exactly the same path in respect of sort of not quite falling into geology, but not knowing that it was going to be my career going forward. The first 3 years of my degree at Southampton covered a wide range of mainstream geology topics, which like Lucy and Louise said, give you a really good grounding in the fundamentals. But at that stage, I hadn't specialised in particular and couldn't really envisage what a career in geology would look like. And then in the 4th year, I elected to undertake a module that covered management of a mineral exploration business. And everything sort of clicked into place, kind of like Lucy's saying about the bigger picture. That all fell into place for me. And I knew then that I wanted to pursue a career in economic geology. When I graduated in 2007, I was really fortunate to end up in a company headed up by Dr. Bob Foster, who's an expert in mineral exploration with a particular focus on gold. And he's got strong ties back to academia. So I really couldn't have asked for a better mentor for the first decade of my career. In terms of why I've stuck with it, I mean, why wouldn't I really? It's such a vibrant and multifaceted industry. I really enjoy the interaction across a wide range of disciplines, from technical, whether that be field or lab-based, right through to the commercial and legal sections of it, and the sustainability. I guess you're seeing through that, Lucy and Louise as well. But the very nature of the mining industry lends itself to its members developing a really broad skill set, and you can apply yourselves in lots of different ways. For example, my role at the moment with Oriel, one day I could be reviewing drilling data or undertaking a due diligence review of an acquisition target. And the next day I could be drafting a heads of terms for a joint venture earning agreement. No 2 days are the same. And I think it's that variety in the role that really keeps me engaged and interested, as well as being underpinned by the scientific work that all of our careers are based on. 14 years on, I couldn't see myself in any other career, to be perfectly honest. And I've even got my 4-year-old daughter telling me that she wants to follow in my footsteps. So that's that's quite good to see.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, and we've had hints of it up till now about all the different experiences you get with a career in mining. You know, what opportunities have you had that perhaps you wouldn't have if you'd followed a different career path?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest opportunities for mining, of course, is travel. You know, mines are in interesting places. It's just the nature of where they are. So, you know, I mean, I've been doing this quite a while. I graduated in 1990, so it's frighteningly 31 years ago. But you know, I've actually lived in 12 different countries. You know, I've travelled to more than 40. And for the last sort of 20 years or so, I've very much specialised in nickel. It's you know what we do, and yes, I mean, I suppose I'm fortunate to have had the opportunity to not just work for mining companies, but founded one. So you know, in 2013, we founded Brazilian Nickel, and you know, and that takes you to, obviously that took us to Brazil, because that's where our nickel, our flagship project was. That we're nickel heap leachers, and we selected a project in Brazil. But what comes with going to those remote locations, which I also find really interesting, is the fact that you're helping to develop the local communities as well. You know, and that comes now with the whole responsible side of mining. But you're where we are in Brazil. When I first went there, you know, there wasn't even electricity in the local houses around us, the local villages, absolutely. But you know, the small communities fairly close to where our project is, you know, had no running water, no electricity, and we've managed to, together with the state of POE where the project is, and the locals, you know, we've managed to improve people's lives. You know, and so it's those sort of opportunities that I find, you know, I'm a metallurgist and I love the technical side, but I also love the more social side and the stakeholder engagement side that is going on today. And you know, I mean, it's I think also by giving those what we see as basic facilities, you start to give those to local communities. It starts to empower the women so that they can also start to get involved, you know, into operations, you know, and we've seen that firsthand with ours in Brazil.
Yeah, that's great. It's really good to hear about the positive impact that, you know, mining companies can have. Lucy, what about some of the experiences that you've had?
Oh, so I was lucky enough to start my career with a company called Outer Strategies, who, although they're based in the UK, have got projects all across Africa. So I managed to spend quite a lot of time in the field out in Morocco and Ethiopia. And, you know, it was just awesome. We used to get paid to go hiking across the High Atlas Mountains with our rock hammers and fly camps in the middle of nowhere, and it all kind of with rose tinted hindsight glasses on it. You know, it's so much fun. But equally, as well as the kind of glamorous getting to go traveling and hunt for rocks with shiny things with your rock hammer, actually there's the mining industry itself is actually quite a small community, but within that there's so many opportunities for meeting such a broad variety of people with really interesting backgrounds. And actually I think one of the best opportunities I've found in my career so far is actually through using your networks and working with people, you actually have a platform to bring issues to a wider audience without sounding too lofty. But I think one of the biggest challenges that the mining industry is going to face in the next few years is actually there's very few students who are studying geoscience and things like that. And actually, we really need to get more females interested in STEM subjects as well. So we need to find a way of communicating with those students, people who like science at school, but you know, if you'd have told me when I was 16 that I was going to end up in the mining industry, I said, what? Why on earth would I do that? So I think one of the best opportunities I've had so far is actually being involved in conversations to try and encourage the next generation of youngsters who are really passionate about the environment, really care about climate change and their impact on the planet, but actually trying to help them see that by doing something like a geology degree, developing that toolkit to understand how the Earth's resources work and how we can extract them responsibly is actually part of the solution to combating climate change. And, you know, that's why mining could be such a fantastic career to end up in.
Great, thank you. Claire, we've kind of, Anne's mentioned it, Lucy's mentioned it, travel seems to be one of the really good opportunities that mining offers you. Kind of what opportunities have you had to get away?
Yeah, like Lucy, really. When I joined Stratix International, just out of uni, it was very similar kind of business model to Altus. We had a number of projects in a lot of different countries, East Africa, West Africa, and Turkey. So from a professional development perspective, I've been very fortunate to work on a number of different gold deposit styles. And because of the close-knit community that Lucy spoke about, I've been very fortunate to spend a lot of time with some high profile economic geologists in the field and really learn from their experience. And I think that's one of the great things about this industry, that people, even at the top of their careers, are passing all of that information down and really engaging with the younger graduates, which is a really good business model, if you like, or a development model. And then from a couple of standout experiences, I guess, would be visiting the bubbling hot springs in the Ethiopian Rift Valley. I know Lucy mentioned she was working in Ethiopia as well, up in the highlands, I think. But what really struck me was that we could actually see these bubbling hot springs bringing gold at ppb level into the muds at the edge, and you could really see how the system was forming those very epithermal gold targets that we were targeting about 5 to 10 kilometers away. And it was textbook, and it was really fascinating to kind of watch it in action. When we think about gold mineralized systems, we normally think thousands or million years old, but this was in real time. It was really special. And then on the more adventurous side, I guess, in Liberia, riding on the back of a 100cc motorbike to get into the more remote parts of the prospect was pretty exhilarating. In fact, we did take a Hilux a few of the days, but we got beached when one of the little bridges across a stream collapsed, and unfortunately our jack wouldn't reach into the bottom of the channel. Fortunately for us, there were some loggers working just down the road, so they got their 6-foot chainsaw, possibly slightly excessive, chopped up some wood and gave us a base to put into the channel so that we could get ourselves out of there. But I guess me telling that story is really just to illustrate that this is not your average desk job, and it goes much beyond, much further than the underlying science. It's pretty exciting.
Great, thank you. And you're off to Cameroon at the weekend, you said earlier.
Yep, that's right. A few of us are heading out there. We've got a 3,000 meter maiden drilling program that's just commenced. So I'm not sure whether I'll have any further stories to add to the repertoire, but certainly looking forward to going and seeing some core.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Claire just mentioned it, mining's not your average desk job. As you said, you've been in it for quite a few years now. You must have had some interesting stories over that time.
Yes, an awful lot. I think most of them not really fit to share, but yes, I mean, I'm not an exploration geologist either. So, when I go somewhere, it's a bit further along the line. We're starting to develop a project where, we're setting up, either test work or building a camp and a much bigger camp that, building demo plants and things like that, which perhaps have 100 people operating them and the like. And yes, I think perhaps rather than talk about some stories, something I wouldn't mind talking about is just the positive changes that we've seen over the years. And I think, when I did start, my first job back in 1990, there were literally no women anywhere. If they were there, they were giving me a cup of tea, or they were typing up the reports that I was writing, because in those days I actually bizarrely had to write them by hand and hand them to somebody. This was in the Netherlands. And that's changed massively, and we are just starting a construction at the moment of our small scale project. I'm very, very pleased that we've literally just signed up, 2 or 3 actual local women to be operators. And this is unheard of. We wouldn't have been able to do this even 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that's because of the way, companies have changed the way they work. We've made very sure at our camp that everything is really female friendly. We have no shared accommodation. We've got no blocks of toilets. Everybody has an ensuite. And the local ladies have seen this as well, and are really keen to suddenly take place next to a guy, which they would never have done, even when we first arrived there a couple of years ago. So I think we're making huge changes in making the mining industry in general more appealing. It's great that we can all go out and have adventures, but not everybody can have an adventure in mining. There's a lot more, perhaps the harder work, and once people are in production, it's you're doing the same thing every day. But these days, as it's been mentioned often, and I'll perhaps say a bit more about that in a moment anyway, but it is very important that that we do mine responsibly, and that takes a lot of innovation. So there's a lot of interesting things that can go on because of that innovation as well, I think, to attract people to the mining industry. But yeah.
Thank you. Louise, what about you? I think you're kind of director of corporate relations at the moment, but you have spent your time kind of out in the field as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I spent, before moving into corporate relations, I spent 10 years as an equity analyst, and quite frequently I went on site visits to visit projects in order to be able to write research about them for the stock market. And I think in doing so, as Claire says, you collect a lot of experiences, in many cases, a lot of funny stories, and these stories seem to be self-deprecating with my luck. So one that I thought I'd share with you that happened early on in my career, probably 15, 16 years ago. I learned very early on that it's best, if possible, to just take carry-on luggage on a plane. I've only ever lost my suitcase once, actually, but when I did, it was in Sierra Leone. So I had the experience of clothes shopping in Freetown, and as some of you are probably aware, there's a different style of dress actually in some cases out in Sierra Leone. And I was really just looking for a pair of jeans and a couple of t-shirts, and it was a little bit easier said than done. And I eventually found a couple of pink t-shirts that I hurriedly bought. And on closer inspection, there must have been some sort of Scottish theme going on, because one had a huge sparkly Scottish flag on the front of it, and the other one had a kind of cartoon Loch Ness monster on it as well. And I teamed this outfit with a pair of massive men's Wellington boots from a builder's merchant at the port, and that was my look for the rest of the trip. So that was one of my early ones. And as I say, if I can give you any advice, carry-on luggage where possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that. It's happened to me a few times as well. So yes, in the bizarrest of places. I've even had my luggage follow me around the world.
Brilliant.
Yes, on a 3-week trip, which was quite interesting. But yeah.
Great, thank you. Lucy, we've touched on a lot of things, but if you can just summarise why you think the mining industry is a really exciting industry for young women.
Well, I think it's because there's so much variety. We've talked a lot about, you can go on all of these exciting trips around the world, and that is very true, but also that's not for everybody. And actually, Anne touched on the amount of innovation that the industry needs. And because there's this huge increase in demand for raw materials that we need to fuel this energy transition, actually, innovation is going to be really key, whether that's in applying data science, for example, to our exploration programs, or developing new ways to extract key metals from different mineral deposits. There's going to be such a huge amount of innovation needed in the exploration side of things, the extraction side of things. We're going to have to think about recycling as well and how the whole circular economy fits in. And actually all of that is underlain by this kind of pressing need to do what we can to try and combat climate change. So I really think that there's such a vast range of cool, cutting edge, exciting careers within the mining industry. And actually, we need a diverse set of brains to help us tackle that challenge. And so that means we need people from a diverse set of backgrounds. We need more females. We need people from different ethnic backgrounds, different social backgrounds. And we need to make the mining industry an attractive place for them to be as well. So, yeah, I think there's just so many opportunities. We just need to try and have those conversations with younger kids, I think.
Great. Thank you. Anne, what about you? Have you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, I think, just to reiterate the fact that, we do want to decarbonize the world. That's where we're heading. We know we've got a sort of an energy electrification, almost a revolution going on around us, which has almost been, speeded up by COVID as well, because people have seen cleaner streets, etc., when we've not been hurtling around in our cars like we normally do. And there are huge amounts of raw materials needed for that. And not just, we can't just necessarily go mine those raw materials in the way we always have done. An OEM, a Volkswagen or somebody like that, they want to know that the materials that they're putting in their electric vehicles are coming from, ethically, environmentally sensitive, mining sources really, and CO2 footprint is obviously huge there as well. And that comes again with innovation, which we both, everybody's mentioned, touched on somewhat, but I think it leads to actually a really exciting time. I've been in the natural resources sector. I actually worked in oil and gas bizarrely for the first 10 years of my career, but I've been in mining since around 2000, and I think this is one of the most exciting times for the mining industry because of that. It's and there's a lot of work to be done out there on particularly reducing CO2 footprint, I think, which means electrification of the vehicles on the mine sites and all of that as well. So, and there are naturally low CO2 operations, Cornish Lithium's looking to try and do one of those. Our project in nickel, because of the way we process, is also inherently low CO2, but we're still working on even reducing that further, and that needs, I hope that makes, anybody who's interested in the technical side of as we go forward with this, and I will call it a revolution, I really do think it is, that makes this an exciting place for people to look to work.
Great, thank you. Claire, if you could give young women exploring a career in mining one bit of advice, what would that be?
Well, I think today we've heard how many different roles there are in the industry, and roles that women can get involved in. It doesn't have to be field-based, or it can be field-based. But so I think what I would say is just seize every opportunity you've got to find which career pathway you enjoy the most. You don't have to know now, today, where you want to be in 5 to 10 years' time. And that's okay. You really don't have to have your whole career mapped out. And by trying all these seeing all the different parts of the business, like Lucy and I have said, we haven't necessarily ended up where we thought we were, where we thought we would go. So experience of a few years in the mining industry, you might also change your views as you gain insights to different parts of the business. I guess it's just keep an open mind, and based on Louisa's earlier story, a sense of humour as well is probably essential.
Thank you. And Louise, apart from hand luggage, what advice would you give?
Hand luggage is definitely the main one. But no, I suppose in all seriousness, it would be generic advice really for a young woman coming into this industry, or a young man. It would be to work hard, ideally harder than the next person, and get on with people, because it's a small industry. I'm sure other sectors are the same, but you know, quite often your reputation will precede you, and you want that to be a good thing. So those would definitely be two bits of advice I would give. I think I'd add, sort of a bit flippantly, you can get away without getting on with people or working hard, but you better be pretty exceptional. So for most of us, working hard and getting on with people are two key positives, I'd say. Great,
thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. That was a really interesting discussion. I definitely learned a thing or two, I think. Hopefully it will inspire some young women to kind of consider career in industry that's not only exciting, but, you know, actually really vital. So thank you.